Hey, it's David. Got some crash damage to do on the Bandit today. Dropped it last week, coming off a roundabout. No real damage to the bike, just some bits and pieces need sorting. I'm a bit restricted in what I can do in the shed at the moment because power's mostly out whilst we do some work on the house. So first thing I did have to fix was the foot peg. So let me show you that. So snap the actual end of the gear lever off when I came off, which made riding the bike home a pain in the backside. As it happened, there was a piece welded into the end here which I was able to grind off, and then that left a hole conveniently for this bolt that I put through just with some nuts on. I had plans on welding something up and putting it in there, and then I realised I couldn't use a welder, so this is it for now. It was a bit of a quick emergency repair so I could get the bike back on the road. As I say, the crash bars took the most of the hit, some of it here, scraped down here, but the worst of the damage is to this crash bar, bottom of this crash bar here, which has been ground away quite badly, and has certainly reduced its profile quite significantly on this corner. And this is important because this is the corner that keeps the engine casing, which did get a bit of scratching up, off the road. And although this isn't quite so bad to get a hole in on this side, you don't really want to get shit and stuff in here, and holes in engine cases are just a pain in the arse. So this needs to be fixed. Ratty lost on the end of his tail too. So this needs to be fixed. I've got some plans on what to do with it, but there's nothing I can do until the welder's back in operation. Anyway, the one thing that did become obvious the moment I started test riding it is that the bars are bent. Now if you look at the line of the top yoke here and the line of the brace, now although the brace could be a little bit twisted, it could be part of the factors, you can see that there's more of a gap here than there is here, and of course this is the side that actually went down. There's a bit of scuffing to the bark buster, whatever you want to, handguard, whatever you want to call it, and it's certainly done a little bit of damage down at this end, and this is all now loose and needs tightening up. And looking at it visually, if you compare this side down here, the gap between the bottom of this clamp and the yoke, and compare it to this one, it's not so obvious in the picture, maybe you can see it, this is pulled up. So I'm suspicious that this bolt has stretched. Now, given all the clampage that's going on with the bars, because these brace across the ends, you've got the cross brace here, I don't know whether or not the bar is bent or whether that hit instead has transferred itself into the clamp. Only way I'm going to find out is to take it all off and see what's obviously broken. So that's the task now. Right, there's quite actually a lot of free play in these, so it might just be it pulled out of its socket. Try not to lose any of the bits as we take them apart. Strange. So this is the dampers that actually act as a damper compressor, sort of vibration reducer, and you've got these rubber cones that sit in cones here. So I think maybe what's happened is that it's become dislodged from the cone. There's a bolt that sits in there, and there's a spacer that sits between the rubbers, and there's quite a bit of corrosion in there, so it might just need putting back together. But what I did, because I suspected that these bolts might have stretched, is to buy new ones. Looking at them, I think that was probably a waste of money. I reckon if I put these back, they'll go back on straight. There doesn't appear to be any damage. It's obvious to the naked eye. There's no cracks. Similarly, there's no cracks in the yokes. There's no obvious stretching. They're really big and beefy. So it could be the bars did actually bend. I guess I'll find that out by putting it all back together. But first I need to tap these bolts out, because I'm going to replace them with the new ones. I've got the new ones, so I might as well use them, and see whether or not there was any damage to these. Well, I'm not sure why this is catching on these. I'm sure they're not supposed to. Seems to be some rough edges of metal down in there, so I'm just going to relieve those rough edges off. So it remains a tight fit, but it's not a hammer fit. Okay, so put aside the old bolts. Now I'm just going to grease these. I'm also going to grease these dampers so that they slide into their mating cones properly. I'm sure they probably weren't originally greased, and I don't know how all the corrosion from the top yoke is going to work with that, but we'll find out, I guess. Also going to put some grease on this spacer tube. Right, those are ready for assembly. Let's see if we can stick them back on. Alright, and make sure to centre these down into their cups so that they do sit nice and square. Because there's quite a lot of movement there. I want to make sure they are nicely seated and centered. Don't want them twisting in and being canted in the cup. I don't want to tighten them all the way just yet, because again you've got to get the handlebars in there, and the handlebars will hold them tight. So just make sure that they are nicely centered in the cups. And drop the handlebars back in, get them nicely square before putting the caps back on. And then we'll find out whether or not they've got on square. Right, these don't appear to have a top or a bottom to them. Well, as long as you get the right side down, of course. Sometimes these clamps are stepped so that one half sits tight against and then you clamp down the others, but these appear to be flat, so they look like they clamp down both at the same time. Need to say, if you've got a normal tank, be a bit careful about this, because you will end up scratching it, so I suggest you protect it with something. So get these clamps, go down evenly so there's the same gap front and back. Don't tighten them all the way up just yet. You need to make sure they're the correct distance apart this way and this way. And with older bars like this, you should be able to see the previous marks, and then you need to really sit on the bike to check where they sit, and then just nip them down a little bit. Crank these down evenly to the same torque, same gaps between this part and this part, and then we'll torque down the actual handlebar clamps themselves to the yoke. Right, so let's just get these clamps torqued back up. Do them evenly both sides. And refit our clamp. So I'll just nip these up. How are we doing here? Well, I would say it's looking an awful lot squarer than it did before. And those are now sitting at the right heights. So I don't know whether one of those bolts did get bent or stretched, but certainly just reseating them down into the cups seems to have done the trick. So there we go. First bit of crash damage, well actually the second piece of crash damage now corrected. So I'll see you guys again soon.